you so much for your valuable time and participation. And we would love to know about your professional experience and background. Over to you, John.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being here. What was the question? How old am I?
We would love to know about your professional experience and background.
Yeah, so I was, I went to, I started in Florida International University as a freshman studying finance and international business. And then I started minoring in econ later on in my junior year, where I started getting heavily involved on campus with different clubs, which led to a few different internships. Where recently I worked with Citigroup in their commercial banking division, working a lot with credit and some in the consumer retail and healthcare space. I was able to leverage that experience in my time at Citigroup to then ask for a kind of extension period with them, where I'll be interning this summer in their technology coverage team within investment banking. So, I've had experience. I've had about 4 internships. I'm going on my 5th, and this will be, it's just a mix of financial services.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction, John. So, could you please tell us about your journey to land investment banking internship at Citi?
Yeah, it was a long one. I started off, my first internship was with Wall Street Research, and I was just kind of gaining a fundamental outlook on the market and understanding what finance really is and the different career paths within it. And then I moved to GFG Securities, which was a boutique investment bank specialized in real estate out in Miami, where that was kind of my first introduction to a day-to-day job, not necessarily what I'll be doing in New York, but definitely within investment banking. It gave me kind of a visual of what to expect from a bulge bracket, some of the day-to-day work. And then from there, I went to Citi Commercial Banking, where I kind of just used my time there, seeing that I was already a Citi intern, and kind of my desire to break into investment banking. I started working my network. But something that I really wanted to focus on was my experience in commercial banking so that I could talk on it in the interview and kind of just gain some tools that I think I could use within investment banking, since there are some transferable skills there. And what I essentially did was I spoke to a very large person within Citi who was able to help me get an interview. And then I just started networking with a team that kind of opened some doors for me, and essentially just got the offer after the Super Day.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, what do you anticipate on doing in your upcoming IB internship?
So I'm going to be working in the tech coverage team, which is not like some other firms categorize their TMT groups, tech, media, and telecommunications. At Citi, they structure it with technology as one group and media and telecom as another group. So I'm working with tech companies, and our team is split between the West Coast and East Coast, where West Coast focuses a lot on hardware and a lot of the space of software, and the East Coast focuses on infotech, software from an internet side, and some other components within tech. And then on a day-to-day, the main job of an intern is really just supporting the analyst with whatever work he needs, from any type of Excel work to any type of PowerPoint deck creation, to just simple, just reviewing documents that he's already put together. Something called ticking and tying is basically you're just going through an Excel model. It's very much a grunt work, grunt type job, where you're basically just going through every cell, making sure that it's ticking and tying to the correct cell, and it's the Excel model's flowing. So as an intern, I expect to just be supporting the analysts, but then doing some technical and some technical work and on the side as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. So how has your previous experience in finance helped prepare you for your upcoming internship?
I think like investment banking, when you break it down into the two fundamental arms, of advisory and capital raising. Whereas, you can think of capital raising as still advisory, but advisory in the sense of knowing how to buy a company, whether it's through what type of M&A transaction or a leverage buyout. And you think of capital raising as debt or equity capital raising. I think my previous experience within credit, or I should say commercial banking, has allowed me to expand my knowledge on credit. So taking that experience to the fullest and really focusing on that has allowed me to really understand the different types of credit facilities, how they're structured, how a company attains them, the full operational aspect of it, the mechanics behind actually going to a bank as a multi-billion-dollar company and attaining debt, and then using that for different strategic initiatives. Whereas now I'm going to investment banking, taking that knowledge and seeing, not necessarily doing acquisition financing and kind of analyzing that, more so just analyzing a potential deal where with company buying company or company attaining certain types of debt. I think that's just one example of a recent internship helping me with an upcoming one. That's a very obvious one, but if you want something that I think would be beneficial mentioning is that I worked at a restaurant. A lot of people will focus a lot on their finance internships and really undermine the potential skills that you can grab anywhere. And I worked at a restaurant, which is a very fast-paced environment, thinking quick on the go, where I'm learning how to talk to people and moving quickly. And then I'm going to be taking those skills with me to work in a fast-paced environment of investment banking. So I think it's really important when I'm going into my internship to take all my experiences, both financial services related and non-financial services related.
Wow, John, that was really inspiring, I must say. Thank you. So, what was your job strategy to search to find investment banking internship?
Yeah, well, it started with first kind of identifying where I wanted to work. So the major hubs that would provide me a really good investment banking experience. And I found that to be, San Francisco, Chicago, New York City, potentially Houston, even if I wanted to work in oil and gas. But I narrowed down. At one point, I was just going everywhere and kind of just applying to any place I could. But it started getting more refined and more directed when I started seeking advice from people from different business clubs that I was a part of, and some alumni that was from my university that was giving me good direction. And basically what I was doing was I was cold emailing companies that I would find from Google and just basically create an Excel worksheet. Each tab was a different city. Each column was a different person. Each row was a different company. And then I was just finding people's names and emails and then reaching out to them. That's the grunt way of doing things and really going head on. Another way is to apply for something I did, diversity, a lot of diversity camps, any type of undergraduate exposure that you can attain from a bulge bracket firm or middle market firm that will basically fly you out. They'll go through kind of a 2-day sort of hosting you and kind of giving you exposure to all lines of businesses within the bank. And then you take that opportunity to then network with the line of business you want, which is, in my case, investment banking. That's another way. Those are mainly the two ways that I could think of right now, other than just straight up applying, looking at top firms that I was interested in that I already had maybe my foot in the door with. Not foot in the door in the sense that I had an experience, but I knew some people that would push my resume forward.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful answer, John. So we would love to know your views, 3 tips to make your resume noticeable for investment banking roles.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they forget that the resume is not being looked at very as thorough as they might think. And when I say that, I mean that the resume on average is looked at for about 15 to 30 seconds. And it's very quick. Especially when you have 6,000 applicants, a lot of bulge brackets, sometimes more, that they get just for specific lines of businesses within specific roles. So you want to make sure that you're quantifying your resume. I found that to be really, really helpful for mine. When a lot of feedback that I've received in the past was, make sure you're inserting numbers. But at the same time, make sure you can back up those numbers. Just like a quick story. I remember I was in an interview This was like when I first started out. I mean, I was trying to get anything I could get my hands on, like any type of experience. And I had on my resume, like upped, up the revenue by 12, something like this. It wasn't necessarily like verbatim, but increased company revenue by 12% weekly off of their $3,000. I don't know. I was just putting numbers in there, and the interviewer called me out. I was like, "Oh, how did you get this information? Like, did you get like weekly emails about this, or did you have access to like a lot of private information?" And I was like, well, so like make sure you're like backing up the numbers that you have, and like they're actually tangible. Another thing would be like attaining relevant experience. That really helps, especially for investment banking where it's very competitive, and you have a lot of people that come from not necessarily more advantageous backgrounds, but speaking from FIU, that's a non-target university. You know, you have to really hustle to get something that's financial services related, so that you can attest to saying this is kind of why I want investment banking, not like just coming from, like I said earlier, like a server background, just working in a restaurant and then trying to move to investment banking, trying to attain some relevant experience. And then lastly, I think it's just make sure it's very well structured. You know, some people, they just get their templates from online, and it's like they want to do 3 pages. And, you know, investment banking, if in any role, they're not within financial services, they're going to look 30 seconds at your resume. So for 3 pages, you're going to be like knocked off the plate, like by the computer. So yeah, I would say those are the three key elements.
Superb. Thank you. So, what do you think? Which 5 topics or subjects did you focus to prepare yourself for investment banking internship interviews?
Yeah, I think like there was quite a few topics that I was preparing for when I went to my IB interviews. Just depended on the firm. I remember when it was like my preparation from a topic standpoint was different when I was interviewing with an elite boutique, versus a bulge bracket, versus, you know, this place in Miami, you know, Brickell area, that's like lower than middle market, I would say, or maybe like lower middle market, maybe. And I think like it varies, but something that like would help all around is definitely like understanding the company. That's one topic. A technical aspect, so knowing valuation, your accounting, just kind of business analysis as a whole, in case they throw any other types of questions out there that doesn't relate to the prior 2 that I mentioned. Also, knowing your resume is very important. Like, you know, having a good resume is one thing, but knowing it like the back of your hand, remembering your experiences, remembering being able to talk about each one, because they're going to dive very deep into that. So those are 3. And I think also understanding like the current M&A landscape, and kind of being able to talk about a few deals that you know of, because they're going to gauge your interest based off of the knowledge of the company. That's one, first and foremost, they want to know, like, are you even interested in working for us? And then like, why are you interested in working in banking? And then if you're able to tie in certain deals that have happened into your why I want to investment banking, that's really helpful. And then really focusing on like behavioral questions. I think that would be the 5th component, which basically is like, you know, why, like, tell me about 3 strengths, give me 3 weaknesses, tell me about a time you succeeded, a time you failed, you know, walk me through your resume and tell me about a time you worked in a team. Those kind of questions I was definitely focusing on, and those would be the 5 factors.
Great. Thank you so much for the answer. So here comes my next question, Sean. What is the interview format of investment banking internship?
I'm sorry?
What is the interview format of investment banking internship?
Yeah. Again, like it's very different between the firms. But I mean, you can definitely expect it to be at least 4 interviews. And those interviews are comprised of both behavioral and technical. At Citi, they do a case study. So you'll do an hour case study, and then you'll move into your first interview of that's behavioral. It's mainly focused on your experiences. And then you'll move into the next interview, which will be about the case study. And then you'll move into the next interview, which will be strictly technical. So they want to judge your capabilities of, if you were to hit the desk right now, like what could you provide? What value add do you have for us? And then the final one would be another behavioral, but more focused on your experiences, like your leadership experiences. There's basically just 2 behaviorals, 1 case study, and then 1 technical. That's like that. They were longer though. So like each interview was about 45 minutes. So it was plus the 1 hour case study. So you're looking at like about 3.5 hours of interviewing. But when I went to an elite boutique, and I won't name drop it, so I don't scare anyone if there's someone on the line that's going to be interviewing there. But I went in at 8:30 in the morning, and I didn't leave until 1:30 p.m. So it was like I had a 45-minute break for lunch, and then it was back to interviewing, just back to back to back to back. It was like 7 or 8 interviews of just like behavioral is a mix, behavioral and technical. It was for a capital markets role. So a lot of the questions were about the markets. It was for equity capital markets. So I should specify that it was about follow-on offerings, different IPOs that were happening in the space. It's different between if you're going for a role in M&A rather than versus a coverage team versus like a capital markets sort of role. So I would say, but the overall gist of it is kind of what I mentioned earlier.
Great. Thank you so much for the answer. So, what do you think are the 3 tips for students to make themselves prepare for career in investment banking?
Definitely if you want to career in investment banking and you're a student like me, you should be talking to a lot of people and asking questions, identifying if this is something that you want. And the only way to do that is by, in my personal opinion, the only way to really know that is by trying it yourself. So you need the internship before you commit to 2 years of this. And then if you want the internship, then you need to get the internship. So you should be networking. You should be applying to different diversity days so that you can get the opportunity to interview. I think it's really important to also kind of identify a firm that you're looking for and that you want to target. So getting on the phone with as many people as you can from certain firms that you're looking at, asking them about what they do, what it took for them to get to where they're at. I think that's really important. And, really understanding investment banking, like what they do, a lot of times, and like, it's not, it's not bad. I mean, it's bad, but it's not like if you're talking to someone on the phone and you ask a question, like that's an investment banker, and you say, oh, you guys trading stocks and issuing different types of insurances, like just questions that are not related to investment banking whatsoever. And you've already done like 17, you've done a lot of calls of networking about investment banking, you haven't gotten there, like understanding fundamentally what they do, then that's kind of a red flag for you to be like, okay, I need to definitely be researching investment banking more so I understand what they're actually doing. So understanding what they're doing and networking is a big part of breaking into investment banking.
Fantastic, really valuable tips. So based on that only, John, I would like to ask you, so what are the 5 most important questions asked in the interview for IB internship?
The 5 most important questions to ask, if you get 5, like in one interview, that's like probably too much. But I mean, I would say like spread out between like all your interviews. You should definitely be asking, I wish like maybe at the end of this call, I can maybe drop a link of, I don't know if I'm able to do that, but we'll find that out. But I think like, there's this article online that highlights it really well, but definitely not like, I'll tell you what not to, first, so that that's on there too. Like you're not asking first, like what do investment bankers do? You're not asking kind of what they do on a day-to-day in the interview. I don't think that's really good. And you shouldn't be kind of asking about their personal life and the hours. You shouldn't be asking about the pay. But you should be focused on kind of the anything revealing about the firm, the team, and kind of their value add without mentioning the day-to-day. If you word it like, oh, what do you do on a day-to-day? It's like, you don't know. And it's like, why are you here? So, but if you say, oh, how do you contribute to your team and what's your role specifically within your favorite deal? Then you're kind of revealing to them, okay, they're going to talk about their favorite deal and they're going to talk about what their function was, which will be revealing to you as to what they do kind of on a day-to-day. because they have deals every day, or they're not new deals, but they're working on a deal every day. So kind of asking about a deal would be a good question. What's their favorite deal? The question that I asked, that I mentioned earlier, which kind of revealed 2 topics, what they do. So that's 3. And then something about the firm. If there's any recent news about the firm that you're interviewing with and you're able to ask on that, that's really good. That separates a lot of candidates from the good candidates from the bad candidates. If, like, for instance, Citi, when I interviewed, I believe that the team was just completing a deal that I was kind of like let in on. I didn't know any specifics, just knew that they were working on this deal out in a certain region. I went on Bloomberg and started doing some extra digging and found the deal. And they were like, okay, like I mentioned that in the as a question. Oh, how was this? I heard this person was working on this deal, and I saw it just closed. How did that do? So that's for asking about that sort of specific firm group question. And then if you really want to go above and beyond and you feel like you're connecting with the interviewer and he's very open, you could potentially ask, like, I know one of my good friends, he had a full interview of just talking about his interest in perfumery. So like if, at the end of the interview, he asked the other guy, what are your interests? And like, are you interested in something super specific? I don't know. That might be a question that you could potentially ask. And he was doing investment banking at like a top bulge bracket firm. And like his whole interview was about his interest in perfumery. So first of all, you never know where the interview will go. And then second of all, those are kind of the 5 questions.
Great. Thank you so much. So what are the 3 best resources to keep you updated with development in investment banking industry?
I think like some sources that would be really helpful to prepare for, investment banking and keeping up. Wall Street Journal is helpful for just finance in general. I think but to keep up with like deals, you can look up Deal Book. You can look up Pitch Book. The Pitch Book is more for the buy side sort of deals, but I think I've seen a couple deals, at least from the tech side, that were on there, from the sell side point of view, investment banking, I should say. But Wall Street Journal is really good. The New York Times and Deal Book those are really strong sources. I think something else that, besides keeping up with the investment banking industry, but to continue like refreshing your mind and your technicals, is just going on Wall Street Oasis and finding different types of guides that they have for investment banking. And then that will be helpful, or, breaking into Wall Street, mergers and acquisitions. These are just some sources that I think continually help you prepare for an internship from a technical side. Not just keeping up with like the industry and like what's happening from a deal side. So from a deal side, the 3 sources that I mentioned earlier, and then from kind of preparing for the internship and technical stuff and keeping up with different recent valuation that could be used and changes in that way. Wall Street Oasis, breaking into Wall Street, and mergers and acquisitions are also really good.
Great. Thank you for the answer, John. So what are the key 3 skills required for investment banking intern role?
What are the 3 skills required?
Required for the investment banking intern role.
I think the top 3 skills that are definitely required are, you want to make sure that, I think more than being like technically prepared, you want to be prepared like mentally, and also kind of to be open to working in a team, working long hours, working with people that may be a little edgy, and you have to be on a constant smile and, be a team player and bring a different kind of persona to the team. That's another part of your value add. That's one piece of it, just being mentally prepared. I think a lot of people kind of overlook that, and they're not really focused. I mean, I'm still about to go into my internship, so these are all kind of things that I've been doing. Just being mentally prepared, even doing something and some people might think this is weird, but, just setting a time for yourself that you'll stay awake so that you start preparing mentally for the sleep schedule. So like you'll be up at 9 in the morning, you'll be up at like 8 in the morning or 7:30. and you'll be ready to go by 8:30, and you won't go to sleep until 2 a.m. so that you could start preparing for that cycle. I have friends that they stay up to like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. just to prepare, and then they're up again at 8. And I'm like, well, I think that's a little excessive, but I'll be up at 8, 8:30, and then, prepare for those long hours up until 1 a.m., 2 a.m. That's one component. I think another component is obviously the technical aspect, knowing how to work on Excel, knowing how to work on PowerPoint, having your accounting down and understanding valuation is extremely important for when the analyst, because you're supporting the analyst in what he's doing. So he's expecting you to at least have like, maybe not as he's definitely not expecting you to know as much as he is, maybe not even half, but he is expecting you to know what it is. So technical aspect is important as well. And I think lastly, it's being prepared to talk to many people. You want to be networking with as many people as you can. Networking with your team is important so that they kind of understand your interest, and that also that, you want to get the full-time offer so that you can start working in an industry that you've been fighting for, which is investment banking in my case. So, that's something to be preparing for as well, like networking. And by preparing for that and keeping that in mind, you're setting yourself up for success.
Fantastic. Thank you. So what do you think are the challenges involved with this role?
I think like an upcoming challenge that I'm anticipating. I think like it's not necessarily the like I said, the mental preparedness that I'm doing is kind of helping me overcome that sort of challenge that I'm anticipating, although it is something that I'm concerned about. So being able to stay awake is something I'm concerned about. Being able to function in general is, after 90 to 115 hours of working it's a challenge that I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to, work, making sure that I'm preparing myself from a healthy eating standpoint, to drinking as much water now and balancing my coffee. Those are just things. This is all things that are just revolving around that challenge that I'm anticipating. But something that I really am going to be looking forward to overcoming is just kind of understanding the group dynamic in the beginning. That's always something that, at least for my commercial banking role, was interesting to overcome because it wasn't as fast-paced or demanding as what I'm expecting to be a part of in investment banking. But just overcoming the group dynamic is, I think, probably going to be the toughest because, you want to understand whose main function is what, who's like, where are they at on certain deals? How are you going to create value without kind of annoying an analyst because he's got work to do and, he wants to teach you and he wants to get you involved, but how do you pick up to speed as much as they want you to? So that's probably some challenges that I'm anticipating, but currently overcoming, and just kind of making sure that, the second one I'm overcoming by just keeping up with my team, what they're working on. And then not necessarily knowing exactly, because I'm not like in the firm yet, so they can't really tell me certain things. But just knowing the group dynamic from before I get there, like this is what we work on, this is kind of how we structure things, has helped me overcome that anticipated challenge.
Great. Thank you so much for answering this question, Sean. Sean, we have an attendee who wants to ask you one question. Attendee says his name is Roberto. So he says, my name is Roberto. I am a student from Florida International University. How do I apply to investment banking internships at the Citi Group?
At Citigroup, you basically, you go online, you can Google it. The website is like a black hole. So, basically like, I mean, at least that's from my experience. Like you go through one thing and then it's like, just kind of, I mean, maybe I'm just not operating it correctly. That's possible too. But like, I think I would suggest just going on Google, typing in Citigroup investment banking, and then, you'll have a topic come up or a link, and then you just click that link and then it'll take you to the website, investment banking description. I think a lot of the roles have been filled, probably back in like December time. I think everything was filled, or November time, but definitely like they'll be reopening for 2020 soon. But if you can find it on the website, kudos to you. I mean, I'm a campus ambassador for them and I have some trouble, but that's just because I'm not familiar with it too well. And then also, but if you could go through Google, that's probably the best way.
Great. Thank you so much for the answer. I hope Roberto got his valuable information. So, and thank you, Roberto, for asking this question from our speaker. So, John, here comes my last question. What factors do you consider while selecting employers for investment banking internship?
That's a really good question, because that's something that I really I thoroughly gauged with Citi. There's something about a really good culture that a lot of investment bankers will probably tell you is like the hit or miss for them when it comes to like choosing a team and choosing a team, choosing a line of business, and then overall the firm. Um, so I think to break it down into those three, the firm was pretty easy for me because I saw the culture at Citi. I kind of saw their global outreach and their social responsibilities and what they do and how they take that and their initiatives in different places and giving back. Um, the way that they invest in young talent, at least from my experience, has been phenomenal. Able to identify a firm like that, I knew that they were going to invest in me when I first hit the desk as an intern, and then if I was to become onboarded for full time, that they would be taking their time with me and really welcome me to the firm. One thing that I based a lot of my search off of was my second internship at GFG, or excuse me, second internship, but first real internship, real, 9 to 6 kind of job, 9 to 5 um, kind of job. And that was with GFG Securities, which was the boutique investment bank that I worked for in Miami. And that firm is like incomparable when it comes to culture. I mean, I walked in there, they welcomed me with like a huge gift basket. We eat lunch together every day at 12. We used to eat lunch together. We would go out to eat afterward. I mean, I was just the intern. So that was something that, granted, the deal flow was a lot less intensive and the work was a lot less extreme. So like they had the ability to do that in the time. But the culture was really great, and it was a very welcoming kind of family-oriented culture. I said, okay, this is the kind of firm I want to work for, but in New York and at a bulge bracket bank, so I get more complex deal flow, more complex deals and then more deal flow. So when I was looking for a firm, I just was blessed with landing at Citi, which kind of, as I was experiencing, found it to be just like GFG in the sense that it was a lot of welcoming people. Now, I'm sure it's different from team to team, but the commercial banking team I was on and the incoming team that I'm planning on joining, from what I've seen there, from the people I've talked to on the incoming team, they seem to be like that. And from the commercial banking team, they were like that. So it was just making sure that I had that check mark, that it was a good culture, supporting culture, and people that like to go out after work together, that know each other, that aren't heavily involved in each other's lives, but like can say, hey man, like, how's your wife doing? Or how are the kids? Or something like that. I'm 22 years old, so I don't have any of those yet, but something, along those lines of how's everything going from a personal life standpoint. And then when I was choosing a team, I was definitely kind of gauging on the ability of the team to provide a lot of deals and bring in a lot of work that I think would be stimulating and that would keep me there. And then obviously the line of business was already check marked for me. So those three were the main three components that I used to evaluate the line of business, the firm, and the team.
Great. Thank you, John, for sharing such valuable advice, expertise, and insights with us. I must say we loved listening to you. So now I